There is something dangerously seductive about tomorrow. Tomorrow promises us a clean slate. Tomorrow whispers that we'll have more time, more energy, more clarity. Tomorrow tells us we'll be ready. And so we wait, we delay, we postpone the very things that could change our lives, not because we are incapable, but because we are convinced that the right moment hasn't arrived yet. But what if I told you that tomorrow is the most expensive lie you keep telling yourself? Because tomorrow doesn't exist. It has never existed, and it never will. There is only today, right now, as you sit here, breathing, listening, thinking this is your moment. Not later, not after you feel ready, not after things become easier. This is it. And the truth is, most people underestimate the power of today because it feels small, it feels ordinary, it feels like just another day in a long line of days. But what they fail to see is that every extraordinary life is built on a series of very ordinary days that were used differently. The difference between the life you have and the life you want is hidden in how you use today, not your talent, not your background, not your circumstances. Today, we live in a world that glorifies big moments, the breakthrough, the overnight success, the viral moment, the grand transformation. But what we don't celebrate enough are the quiet decisions made on random Tuesdays, the invisible discipline, the small actions that no one applauds. Because that's where real power lies. Power is not in what you say you'll do someday. Power is in what you choose to do today, especially when no one is watching. You see, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It rises when things are exciting and disappears when things get hard. If you rely on motivation, you will always be inconsistent. But today doesn't ask you to feel motivated. Today asks you to show up. And showing up is far more powerful than feeling ready. There will never be a perfect day to start. There will never be a moment when fear disappears completely. There will never be a time when everything aligns perfectly in your favor. So if you are waiting for that moment, you are not waiting for the right time. You are waiting forever. Because the people who move forward in life are not the ones who feel the most ready. They are the ones who act despite not feeling ready. They understand something most people don't. They understand that confidence is not something you have before you start. It is something you build because you started. And it always starts with today. Think about this for a second. Every skill you admire, every achievement you respect, every person you look up to, they all have one thing in common. They all had a day one. Not a perfect day. Not a fully prepared day. Just a day where they decided that waiting was no longer an option. And that day looked very ordinary. No fireworks, no applause, no guarantees, just a decision. A decision to begin. And that is where your power lies. Not in knowing everything. Not in having it all figured out, but in deciding that today matters enough to take action. Because once you understand the value of today, everything changes. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making excuses that sound reasonable but lead nowhere. You stop saying, I'll start when I feel better, or I'll do it when I have more time, or I'll try again next week. You realize that those sentences are not harmless. They are costly. Every time you delay, you are not just postponing action. You are reinforcing a habit of hesitation, and habits shape identity. So when you repeatedly choose not to act today, you are quietly becoming someone who doesn't follow through. But the opposite is also true. Every time you act today, no matter how small the action is, you are building evidence. Evidence that you are someone who shows up. Evidence that you are someone who moves forward. Evidence that you are someone who does what they say they will do. And that evidence becomes identity. This is why today is so powerful. Because today is not just about results. It's about who you are becoming. You don't become disciplined in a single moment. You become disciplined through 1,000 small decisions to do what needs to be done, especially when it's inconvenient. You don't become confident by thinking about confidence. You become confident by taking action, by failing, by learning, by trying again. And all of that happens in today, not tomorrow. Today. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't work? These are real fears, and they are valid. But here's what you need to understand. Failure is not the opposite of success. Inaction is, because when you fail, you learn, you adjust, you grow. But when you don't act, nothing changes. You stay exactly where you are. And over time, that becomes the greatest regret. Not the things you tried and didn't succeed at, but the things you never tried at all. The conversations you never had. The ideas you never pursued. The risks you never took. And it all comes back to the same root cause. You didn't use today. You see, time is not your enemy. Time is neutral. What matters is how you use it. Two people can have the exact same 24 hours, and yet their lives move in completely different directions. Why? Because one person treats today as an opportunity, and the other treats it as something to get through. One person asks, what can I build today? The other asks, how can I pass the time today? And those questions lead to completely different outcomes. If you want a different life, you don't need more time. You need a different relationship with today. You need to start seeing today not as something ordinary, but as something sacred. Because today is the only place where life actually happens. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. But today is in your hands. And here's the truth that most people don't want to hear. You are always choosing, even when you think you're not. When you scroll instead of working, you are choosing. When you delay instead of starting, you are choosing. When you avoid instead of confronting, you are choosing. And those choices compound, day after day after day, until one day you wake up and realize that your life is not a result of one big decision. It's a result of thousands of small choices you made in moments that felt insignificant, moments like today. So the question is not whether today matters. The question is what you are going to do with it. Are you going to let it slip by like so many days before it? Or are you going to claim it? Are you going to treat it like just another day? Or are you going to treat it like the opportunity it actually is? Because here's the reality. You don't need to change your entire life today. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to take massive, overwhelming action. You just need to take one step, one intentional, meaningful step. It could be small. So small that it feels almost insignificant. But it's not. Because small steps taken consistently lead to massive change, and consistency is built one day at a time. This day, today, you write one page, you make one call, you learn one concept, you take one risk, you show up one more time than you feel like it, and you do it again tomorrow. Not because tomorrow is guaranteed, but because today taught you that you are capable of showing up. And that changes everything. Because once you prove to yourself that you can act today, you break the cycle of waiting, the cycle of doubting, the cycle of postponing your own potential. You step into momentum, and momentum is powerful. Momentum turns effort into habit. Habit turns action into identity, and identity shapes your entire life. But it all starts with today. There is no shortcut around it. There is no way to bypass it. There is no future version of you that magically becomes everything you want without going through today. That version of you is built right here, in this moment, with the choices you make after you leave this room, not with what you intend to do, but with what you actually do. Intentions are comfortable. They make us feel like we're moving forward even when we're not. But action is what creates change, and action only exists in today. So if there is something you've been putting off, something you know deep down you need to do, something that scares you, challenges you, pushes you, this is your moment, not later. Not someday. Now. Because the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes. The more you think about it, the more intimidating it feels. But the moment you take that first step, something shifts. The fear doesn't disappear completely, but it loses its control over you. And that is where freedom begins, not in the absence of fear, but in the decision to act despite it. That decision is made in today. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to be extraordinary. You just need to decide that today is enough. Enough to start. Enough to try. Enough to move forward. Because the truth is, the people who change their lives are not the ones who had the best plan. They are the ones who respected today enough to act on it. They didn't wait for clarity. They created it through action. They didn't wait for confidence. They built it through repetition. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They understood that the perfect moment is the one you choose to act in. And that moment is always today. So when you leave here, don't just feel inspired. Feeling inspired is easy. It fades. What matters is what you do next. What matters is whether today becomes just another day you remember as the day I felt something, or whether it becomes the day I did something. Because one leads to temporary emotion. The other leads to transformation, and transformation is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's built in moments where no one is watching. It's built in decisions that no one applauds. It's built in days that look like today. So don't underestimate this day. Don't waste it waiting for a better one. Don't trade it for comfort, distraction, or excuses. Because this day has more power than you realize. It has the power to change your direction. It has the power to redefine your identity. It has the power to move you closer to the life you keep thinking about, but haven't fully committed to yet. But only if you use it. Only if you choose it. Only if you decide that today is not just another day. It's your day. And what you do with it will define what happens next. And most people don't even realize they are setting standards. They think standards are something you declare once, something you write down, something you say out loud to feel strong and committed. But that's not how it works. Your real standards are not defined by what you say. They are defined by what you accept. Every single day, in the smallest moments, you are teaching yourself what is okay. When you decide to wake up late even though you promised yourself you wouldn't, you are setting a standard. When you choose distraction over focus, even for a few minutes, you are setting a standard. When you let something slide, when you delay something important, when you avoid something uncomfortable, you are setting a standard. And the dangerous part is, it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels harmless. It feels small. It feels like just this once. But there is no such thing as just this once when it comes to standards. Because the brain doesn't record exceptions. It records patterns. And once a pattern is established, it becomes familiar. And once something becomes familiar, it becomes comfortable. And once it becomes comfortable, it becomes your normal. That's how standards are built. Gradually, repeatedly. Not in big moments, but in small decisions that seem insignificant at the time. And this is why so many people feel stuck. Not because they lack ambition, not because they don't have goals, but because they have unknowingly lowered their standards over time. They didn't wake up one day and decide to settle. They just tolerated a little more than they should have over and over again until settling became their default. They tolerated being late. They tolerated inconsistency. They tolerated average effort. They tolerated distractions. They tolerated excuses. And eventually, they didn't even see it as tolerance anymore. They saw it as normal. That's the real danger. Because once something becomes normal, you stop questioning it. You stop challenging it. You stop trying to change it. And that is how potential quietly fades, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small moments where you accepted less than what you were capable of. But here's the truth. The same way standards can fall, they can also rise. And they rise the exact same way they fall, through daily decisions, through what you choose to accept, through what you choose to reject. You don't raise your standards by making a big announcement. You raise your standards by refusing to tolerate what you used to tolerate, by catching yourself in those small moments and choosing differently. That moment when you feel like delaying something important and you don't. That moment when you feel like giving half effort and you give your best. That moment when you want to avoid something uncomfortable and you face it anyway. Those are the moments that redefine you. Because in those moments, you are sending a new message to yourself. You are saying, this is no longer acceptable. And at first it feels uncomfortable. It feels forced. It feels unnatural. Because you are going against your existing patterns. But that discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. You are breaking an old standard and building a new one. And that process is never easy. Because your mind will try to pull you back. It will remind you of the easier path. It will suggest that one small exception won't matter. It will try to convince you that you've already done enough. But this is where awareness becomes power. Because once you understand how standards are formed, you stop negotiating with those thoughts. You stop treating them as truths. You start seeing them for what they are, old patterns trying to survive, and you make a different choice. Not once, not twice, but consistently. Because consistency is what turns a decision into a standard. You see, anyone can act differently once. Anyone can push themselves for a day. Anyone can make a strong choice in a moment of motivation. But standards are not built in moments of motivation. They are built in moments of resistance. When you don't feel like it. When it's inconvenient. When it's uncomfortable. When no one is watching. That's when your standards are truly tested. And that's when they are truly set. Because if you can hold the line in those moments, you prove something to yourself. You prove that your standards are not conditional. They are not dependent on how you feel. They are not influenced by your environment. They are a reflection of who you have decided to be. And once you reach that point, everything changes. Because now your behavior is no longer driven by mood. It is driven by identity. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this? You ask, is this aligned with my standard? And if it's not, you don't do it. Simple as that. No negotiation, no justification, no excuses. Because you understand the cost of lowering your standards. You understand that every time you tolerate something below your potential, you are reinforcing a version of yourself that you don't actually want to be. And that awareness creates discipline. Not forced discipline, not temporary discipline, but real discipline. The kind that comes from clarity. The kind that comes from knowing what you stand for and what you refuse to stand for. Now, let's be clear about something. Raising your standards does not mean becoming perfect. It does not mean you will never make mistakes. It does not mean you will never have off days. What it means is that you don't accept those moments as your new baseline. You don't let one bad decision turn into a bad day. You don't let a bad day turn into a bad week. You catch it early. You correct it quickly. You return to your standard because your standard is not defined by never falling. It's defined by how quickly you get back up. And that is a powerful shift because it removes the pressure of perfection while maintaining the commitment to growth. It allows you to be human without becoming complacent. It allows you to improve without being overwhelmed. And most importantly, it keeps you moving forward because progress is not about being flawless. It's about being consistent. And consistency is built on standards. Standards determine how you show up when things are easy. Standards determine how you respond when things are hard. Standards determine what you do when no one is watching. They are the invisible force behind every visible result. And if you want to change your results, you have to change your standards. Not someday. not when you feel ready, but today, because today is where those standards are being reinforced right now. In this moment, in the choices you are making, in the thoughts you are entertaining, in the actions you are taking or avoiding. And here's something most people don't think about. Your standards don't just affect you, they affect everyone around you. Because standards are contagious. When you tolerate mediocrity, it spreads. When you accept excuses, they multiply. But when you raise your standards, when you hold yourself accountable, when you refuse to settle, you create a different energy. You create a different environment. You influence others without saying a word. Because people don't follow what you say. They follow what you demonstrate. And when they see someone who consistently shows up, who consistently does the work, who consistently holds themselves to a higher level, it challenges them. It inspires them. It raises the bar for everyone. And that is leadership, not through authority, not through words, but through standards, through example, through daily actions that reflect a commitment to something greater. But it all starts with a simple question. What are you tolerating today? What are you allowing in your life that you know deep down is below your potential? Where are you making excuses? Where are you settling? Where are you choosing comfort over growth? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary because awareness is the first step to change. You cannot raise a standard you are not aware of. You cannot improve something you refuse to acknowledge. So you have to be honest with yourself. Not harsh, not judgmental, but honest, because honesty creates clarity, and clarity creates change. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize a low standard, it becomes a choice. And that's where your power lies, in that choice to continue tolerating it or to raise the standard, to say, this is no longer acceptable. And to back that statement with action. Not words, not intentions, but action. Because action is what transforms standards from ideas into reality. And that transformation happens in the smallest moments. Moments that most people overlook. Moments that most people dismiss. But those moments are everything, because they are the building blocks of your identity. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are building a stronger identity. Every time you choose effort over ease, you are reinforcing a higher standard. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you are becoming someone new. And that process never stops. You are always becoming. The only question is, what direction are you moving in? Because if you are not intentionally raising your standards, they will naturally fall. Not all at once, but gradually, silently, until one day you realize you are living a life that is far below what you once imagined. And by then, it feels harder to change. Not impossible, but harder. Because now you are not just building new standards, you are breaking old ones. And breaking patterns takes effort. It takes awareness. It takes consistency. But it starts the same way it always does, with today, with one decision, one moment where you choose differently, where you refuse to tolerate what you used to tolerate, where you raise the bar, even if only slightly, because that slight increase matters. It creates momentum. It creates a shift. And over time, those small shifts become massive transformations. But only if you stay consistent. Only if you keep choosing that higher standard. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it feels like no one notices. Because you notice. And that's enough. Because at the end of the day, your life is not shaped by what others expect of you. It's shaped by what you expect of yourself. And those expectations are expressed through your standards. Through what you accept. Through what you reject. Through what you choose to do again and again. So don't underestimate the power of today in setting those standards. Don't treat it like just another day. Because today is where your future normal is being created. Right now. In real time, with every choice you make. With every action you take. With every standard you either uphold or lower. And whether you realize it or not, you are writing that story today. Through what you allow. Through what you ignore. Through what you decide is acceptable. And once something becomes acceptable, it becomes repeatable. And once it becomes repeatable, it becomes permanent. Until you decide otherwise,